Today presents Strike Battleship Argent, Book 1 in the Starships at War series, by Shane Lachlan Black. Copyright 2016.
Lieutenant Yili Curtis knew what the intruders had done. She knew what was happening to her ship, and she had to admit it was a beautifully executed act of pure sabotage. Argent hadn't taken the enemy cruiser seriously enough, and it was about to pay a heavy price for being last across the line. None of that stopped her from frantically trying to reroute the power systems she knew were about to go up like a volcano full of gunpowder. Her hands flew over the controls at Oxcon 4, one of the power matrices constructed closer to the center axis of the ship. She had activated the blast hatches around her little mechanical sanctuary and taken the extra few moments to rig up a triple redundant wired channel to the bridge in the event radio communications were cut off. Unfortunately, so far she hadn't heard a sound over that channel. The lights went out for the 5th time. She grabbed her shock couch harness with both hands and braced herself. The subsequent crash and metal-tearing lurch in the deck plating shook the small chamber she was in like she was inside a flimsy aluminum storage cabinet being thrown down a flight of steel stairs. Alarms sounded everywhere. Alert signals were being transmitted throughout the ship's systems, and her contact boards all shifted to various shades of red. Engineering to bridge. Nobody answered. Engineering to bridge. Lieutenant Yili here. Acknowledge. Still, nobody answered. Dominique, this is Yili Curtis, Chief Engineering Officer of DSS Argent. Identifier Ghost 2946. Match voice print and acknowledge. Acknowledged, Yili. How can Argent help you today? Report status of this vessel. DSS Argent is at General Quarters. Vessel is currently operating at 81% combat effectiveness. Reactors 7 and 8 are offline. There are hull breaches portside on decks 11, 14, 16, and 21. There is a magnesium fire on deck 31 in section 70 approximately. Stop. Report status of bridge personnel. Deck 1 is currently on emergency life support. Medical personnel are responding to reports of casualties. Systems failures prevent any direct contact with the bridge. Who is in command of this vessel? Captain Jason Hunter was last known to be in command of DSS Argent. What is his status? Unknown at this time. A cold shot of adrenaline landed in Lieutenant Curtis's hips. She knew the risks of war better than most personnel aboard, but she also knew what the dreamy detachment of experiencing the worst felt like. It didn't help she was practically isolated in one of the smallest rooms on the ship. She keyed her comlink. Yili Tamu. Static. Yili Tamu, come in. Silence. Lieutenant Curtis's cursed through gritted teeth. Dominique, are you in contact with any of the senior officers? Negative. Understood. Since I cannot establish contact with any of the senior officers either, I am assuming command of this vessel. Acknowledged. Senior Lieutenant Yili Curtis now in command of DSS Argent. Note the time in the ship's log and raise Skywatch on Flight 2. Affirmative. Coding your message. Yili took a moment to reconfigure the engineering command system to feed her console with the relevant status updates from the other subsystems in and around the Argent. Primary among her priorities was life support, which she discovered, to her considerable relief, was still functioning at 95% capacity. I have Skywatch on subchannel J9 switching comnets. Affirmative. Skywatch to engineering. Come in. Engineering Lieutenant Yili here. What is your status, Skywatch? Aye, ma'am. About a dozen missile strikes impacted Argent's port quarter. The first wave knocked out our screens. The second wave inflicted critical damage on our transmitters and point defense batteries. Alert 3 reports they have engaged Kilo X-Ray 1 bearing 290, range 2 million kilometers. Very well, Skywatch. Does Bridge have control of the helm? Negative. The independent Navicomp activated and put the Argent at station keeping when the bridge went dark. We're stopped in space, ma'am. Understood. I'm engaging emergency overrides. Engineering has the helm. Stand by for a starboard pivot maneuver. What is the status of our main batteries and flight decks? Main batteries are operational. Flight 1 reported a fire on deck approximately 4 minutes ago. We haven't been advised of their status. Flight 2 and Flight 3 are both fully operational. Very well. Prep emergency alert squadrons from both rails. Energy weapon loadouts. Advise me on Jet's request. Acknowledged, Lieutenant. Skywatch out. Dominique, raise Nemesis 8 on scrambled data link. Affirmative. Coding your message. Yili switched her console to navigational control and pulled up a tactical view of Gitairn Sector 8. It was just as she suspected. Kilo X-Ray 1 had veered off following its successful missile attack, and in the process had drawn Alert 3 out of position. Nemesis 8 was still on station and doing her job, which was likely the only reason Argent hadn't been hit with a second salvo. She quickly combined the tactical report with the firing arcs of Argent's weapons and confirmed her pivot maneuver just might work. Now all she needed was the power. Fortunately, she just happened to be sitting near 4 rather large fusion reactors, none of which were damaged or offline. After a few seconds of rerouting power, she had 2 fully energized rail cannon with both forward and starboard firing arcs. Now she needed a target. Lieutenant, I have Nemesis 8 on subchannel K5. Perfect. Nemesis 8, this is Lieutenant Yili in engineering, acknowledge. Affirmative, Argent, we copy. We are about to perform a reverse starboard pivot and bring our main rail cannon batteries to bear on hostile target Kilo X-Ray 1. Our battle computers are offline. I need a firing solution, and I need you to paint my target. Affirmative, Argent. Stand by.
Shane Lachlan Black here. We built a site called jumpline.click so that we can offer our readers something called keyword navigation. We give you a keyword, you type it in the box, and you click or tap the jump button. And it takes you to a location on our network. Could be a new story chapter, could be a new book, could be a game. But where this really gets powerful is when you use a permanent keyword like today or video. Those keywords always take you to the most recent update. And what we know is that everybody that uses Jumpline is a reader. We don't have to worry about bots. We don't have to worry about slop. We don't have to worry about fake traffic. Everything on the other side of Jumpline is the internet the way it used to be. Human beings enjoying our site. There are only 3 ways to get to Jumpline. You either type the address in your browser, you use a bookmark, or you use a QR code. There's no other way to get to the site. So, the first time you visit, make sure you bookmark or find a QR code and use that each time in your mobile device. That way you're sure that you are getting to the genuine site and you're getting all of the great updates that it makes available. Watch for the keywords under the jump button. Those are always updated and they're always current. We'll see you on Jumpline. 5x5.
Yili watched as the chaotic real-time tactical display suddenly went from a snowy, distorted mess to a crystal-clear view of everything in the sector right down to the designation on Argent's hull. Apparently, Nemesis 8 had launched a couple look-down probes when nobody was paying attention. This gave the fleet little ship a bird's-eye view of everything happening in and around the action. And, since Nemesis 8 was on Argent's side, it gave the battleship crew an equally clear view of local space. One thing any electronic warfare ship always made provision for was its own view of the battle space. Jamming the enemy is generally a good idea. Jamming yourself in the process was almost never a good idea, since there weren't many advantages to having an effective fighting force if nobody knows what the hell is going on or where anything is. The Nemesis corvettes were designed to produce asymmetric interference. They were practically invisible to enemy vessels. They could just about make themselves look like a 3-ring circus tent at ranges as close as half a kilometer if they had the power available. They were also equipped with everything they needed to defeat their own signals so they could keep their motherships in the loop with real-time updates on where the bad guys were and how fast they were moving. And if a Nemesis ship was tough to find, their look-down probes were nigh unto impossible. The little winged cameras were quasi-intelligent automatic evasive action machines. Tracking them down was like trying to catch a greased chicken with a cloaking device and a camera to take unflattering pictures of you while it runs you ragged. By the time they were called on by Lieutenant Curtis, Nemesis 8 had deployed a half-dozen such probes. If what was going on in Sector 8 was a sporting event, the EW corvette was basically controlling enough automatic equipment to turn the battle into a Monday night football telecast. The only thing missing was Howard Cosell. Meanwhile, what was immediately apparent to the Argent's chief engineer was that Alert 3 was distracting enough to the enemy cruiser that it wasn't going to be in position in time to fire a second salvo. But that was going to be true only if Yili was able to pull off her pivot maneuver in the next 20 seconds. The battle looked and felt like three small dogs chasing a carnivorous giraffe, but it was the best Argent could muster at the moment. Nemesis 8 has your target bearing 286 Mark 17, relative range 2.12 million miles. Synchronize manual targeting to key Baker Echo Papa Victor 1448. Acknowledge. Lieutenant Curtis scrambled to pull up the manual targeting interface in time to copy her spotter's directions. She hesitated a moment, trying to remember how to manually synchronize the targeting system. Somehow she managed to recall the rusty instructions from memories of late-night hacking sessions at her Yellow Jacket controls, driving her squadron commanders crazy with unauthorized reconfigurations of the flight deck computers. Finally, after a half-dozen rejections and errors, the manual system synchronized and began following Nemesis 8's telemetry. Acknowledged, Nemesis 8. Targeting control at your command. Stand by for weapons lock. Yeely pulled up a more familiar interface. Her engines. In a matter of moments, she had engaged the engineering overrides and taken a crude control of Argent's helm by simply alternating engine power. The mighty ship nudged itself into motion, backing away from the enemy contact. Yeely throttled the port engines in reverse and engaged the starboard engines forward. Gradually, the firing arcs for the two main weapons batteries she had energized had rotated far enough to bear on the enemy target. When the overlay for the second rail cannon switched from amber to green, she keyed her subchannel. Nemesis 8 rail cannon are bearing on hostile target Kilo X-Ray 1. Lock weapons and stand by. A moment passed. The enemy cruiser continued to bank, exchanging fire with the bobbing and dodging little craft chasing it. Affirmative, Argent. We have a waveform lock and a bearings match on target Kilo X-Ray 1. Fire control at your command, ma'am. Far from Yeely's station on Deck 29 next to Auxcon 4, the enemy cruiser was turning back in Argent's direction with a second barrage of deadly anti-ship missiles locked on the enormous battleship. For reasons none would have been able to explain, all the interference in the sector had disappeared in a split second, leaving the enemy vessel with a wide-open 5x5 frequency lock on the larger ship's space traffic ILS beacon. There were some anomalous readings, but the enemy fire control mistakenly concluded it was due to residuals from the previous interference. It didn't realize it was an invisible electronic warfare corvette providing range and position data to their target. The first rail cannon shot missed, but the subspace disruption didn't. The flash from the passing projectile caused all of the cruiser's polarization systems to reflexively darken its external-facing ports. By the time the cruiser's automatic systems realized they were under attack, they had no time to evade the second shot, nor did they realize Yeely had echeloned her weapons in a continuous firing cycle. The second shot ricocheted off the cruiser's dorsal engine cowlings, slamming against already weakened armor and reigniting the fire's damage control parties had fought to control ever since the torpedo attack. The cruiser stumbled, but continued to close range with Argent, waiting for the moment when it would reach optimal range for another missile barrage. Yeely waited patiently, living up to her brief reputation, except now she was a girl with some rather larger guns than before. She maintained her weapons and their synchronization with Nemesis 8's sophisticated targeting computers. Rail Cannon 3 finished reloading, snapshotted the targeting data and fired again, lighting up space for hundreds of thousands of kilometers. The deuterium slug punctured the cruiser's secondary hull through and through, blasting a cloud of mangled circuitry, armor, and metal fragments into space. The cruiser began to skid as a secondary explosive decompression event overthrusted the vessel's port side. This gave T-Hawk 6 a magnificent target against its already damaged ventral engine superstructure. Lieutenant Abi opened up with his brawler cannons again and began landing punch after overloaded punch into the largest chink in the besieged vessel's defenses. Fires re-erupted and secondary explosions started to answer the lightning-fingered impacts of white-hot plasma energy one after the other. Seconds later, the vessel performed its final maneuver, attempting to bank away while protecting its vulnerable port side. Argent's rail cannons both chose the exact same target bearings. Twin slugs, each roughly the size of a Whelpy 2 diesel submarine, ripped through the cruiser's center of mass at appreciable percentages of light speed. The resulting detonation blew the forward section of the cruiser clear moments before a secondary explosion vaporized her engines. Alert 3 veered in all directions and spiked their escape jets to reach a safe range. Argent's fifth shot was a pinpoint impact on the enemy ship's fusion assembly. There was a brief sun-bright nova of explosive energy, and then only debris-strewn darkness remained.
The rest of the story is only one keyword away. Visit jumpline.click in your browser. New keywords are activated every day. Get access to our entire catalog of science fiction, fantasy, and gamelit.